I'm Zoe. So I work for a local training company, St Thomas Training. They are a specialist training company in the Mental Capacity Act, safeguarding, and other sort of conditions. And then I joined this year after my whole career in the outdoor industry. I worked for local business such as Solent Rib Charter, Solent Events before. And I went on maternity leave and decided needed a change of scenery. So I joined St Thomas Training. My kind of background in the sort of first aid medical field, I'm a first responder for Lymington. So if any of you have any issues, call 999. We tend to get dispatched if there's no local ambulances. So we go to a lot of category 1 calls, so cardiac arrests, strokes, heart attacks, big falls and that sort of thing. So that's kind of how I've got my experience with first aid. So became a first aid instructor, and now here I am today at St Thomas Training. So we deliver training all over the UK, and I'm very much focused on trying to get some local work. For me, I run the first aid department now, and I think first aid is such a crucial skill, knowledge that everyone really should have if you have a responsibility in the workplace, at home or not. I mean, my first ever experience of first aid, I was first on the scene to a road traffic collision. And it was the first time I actually had to use proper first aid, like do CPR and stuff like that. And without sounding too much like a weirdo, it gave me a bit of a buzz, which is why I became a first responder. I enjoy helping people, and I now enjoy teaching how to help people. It's quite refreshing and enjoyable to see people learning these sort of life-saving skills and wanting to come back every year to update their skill set. So I've kind of thought it'd be a good opportunity today to obviously introduce the company, but also just have a quick chat about sort of what legislations are in place of workplaces, and what local businesses might need in terms of first aid training, especially. So if we start off by looking at sort of legislation, I'm sure everyone's heard of or very comfortably aware of the Health and Safety at Work Act. And that basically just requires employers to look after their employees to ensure their health, safety and welfare whilst they're in the workplace. As we go a bit further into it, we start looking at the health and safety first aid regulations. Now, this obviously goes into a bit more detail and talks about what's actually required of a business. So what first aid personnel you might need, what first aid kits you might need, everything from that. So it basically requires you to, or businesses to have adequate and appropriate first aid facilities and personnel, like I said. And that all depends on what you do and who you've got in your business and everything like that. So there's no hard and set rule of every business needs one first aider, or every business needs 2 people that are qualified in first aid, but someone who knows how to call 999. It really just depends on every business as an individual. So it obviously asks people to do risk assessments, which I'm sure you all are very aware of as well. Some people find them fun, like me. People who are geeks like them. But I know they're not for everyone. But yeah, so then it starts looking at considerations to how you choose how many first aid trained people you might need in your workplace. Now, if we look at sort of the different groups that give us that idea, so your key considerations, if we first look at the risk factors in your workplace. So let's say you have low hazards and high hazard workplaces. Low hazards being shops, local community centres, that sort of thing, just really low risk. You might not necessarily need as many first aiders or such high level first aiders in your workplace. Whereas if you're a high risk environment, so you work in construction or you work with dangerous chemicals, you might need a few more first aiders, but you also might need specifically trained first aiders to deal with those sorts of injuries and illnesses. Then we go into the sort of people. So who are your employees rather? How many people might there be? So in like a low risk environment, you need one person who's emergency first aid at work trained for over 25 people. Now, it doesn't that doesn't necessarily mean that if you've got under 25 people, you don't need anyone first aid trained. It's just kind of a guidance that HSE have put out there. I've got the table which I can share with everyone if people want that information. It tells you exactly how many numbers, what sort of risk factor, and then looking at how many first aiders you might need and what training they might need. So I'm not sure if anyone here has been on a first aid training course before. They really vary. So you've got your couple of hours CPR and AED training to a full 1-day emergency first aid at work, and then the more comprehensive 3-day first aid at work qualification. Now, these are all recognised qualifications. I say recognised qualification. They're all set out, or the syllabus is set out by the health and safety executives. But qualifications no longer need to be regulated. So you don't have to go onto a course that's specifically run by St John's Ambulance or is regulated by Ofqual qualifications. You could go to any training company as long as they seem safe and do first aid training, which is a little bit mad. But the HSE have put in documents in place to make sure that you are choosing the right company for you. Now, where we are at St Thomas Training, we do regulated and non-regulated courses, and pretty much the only difference is the money. So obviously, if you do a regulated course, you have to have special certificates, special booklets, everything like that, which then gets sent off to Ofqual to say you've got a regulated certificate, but you don't actually need that certificate. So it's a real grey area, and I can go into way more detail if people need me to. But it basically means as long as you've had the training, it can be signed off by any sort of trainer to give you that qualification. So it's really important, like if you do go and get your employees trained up in first aid, that you check out the syllabus of what that trainer is delivering and make sure it adds up to the first aid regulations, and also that everything that's being taught, it matches the syllabus set out by the health and safety executives. In regards to what's sort of included in the courses, so the emergency first aid at work course I run a lot of. They tend to be the most popular courses to run. They're just at 6 hours, and in that time you look at understanding what first aid is, reporting responsibilities, how to administer first aid to unconscious casualty, resuscitation, safe use of the defib, and then your sort of burns, bleeding, everything like that, all the bitty bits at the end. The first aid at work goes into a lot more detail. So it looks at everything to do on the emergency first aid at work. That's actually day 1. And now day 2 and day 3 looks at head injuries, spinal injuries, breaks and bones, everything, strains, sprains, the lot, poisoning, anaphylaxis. So it is much more in depth, but a lot of companies don't actually need it because you don't need to know how to deal with all of that. You just need to know how to call 999 and deal with something that's presented right in front of you. Now, I have just spoken extremely quickly and in a format that I had not planned to deliver it. So I do apologise that has just gone swimmingly quickly. But that is basically first aid training in a nutshell. But obviously, if anyone's got any questions or thinks that I've missed something, please do pipe up because I'd love to fix anything.
And say, Katie, Sarah, do you cover defib, work with defibrillators and stuff like that?
Yes, yeah. So I deliver defib training as part of all my courses, or as a standalone 2-hour course. But yeah, so we talk about obviously where to find your local defibs because they're dotted everywhere in Lymington. And Lymington's the perfect place for defib finding. I go around the country teaching these sort of courses, and I always look at where the local defibs are to where I'm teaching the course, and you'd be surprised everywhere else how little there are. I mean, from my offices, we're just by Costa on the High Street. I know I could walk to 3 in 2 minutes' time.
Yeah, we have one in our local village, Bartley, and ironically, at my old sailing club, there's a very big sign suddenly put up saying defibrillator found here, which is quite handy at that club. But we do our training, and as a podiatry clinic, all of our team are trained, and we do that every year, renew their training as well.
Mhm.
But, get a lady from Southampton Hospital, a general, to come in.
Okay, yeah.
Comes in with all her kit, just spends a morning with the team, just drilling all of the home, because it does change. It seems every year there's something, a slight nuance, something changes in the process. But it's good fun, good to learn.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's really important. And it's quite interesting, actually. Obviously, you're talking about refresher training, because we don't get a lot of it, because a lot of people do the first aid to tick the box, don't they? Because you're told that you have to do first aid training. Let's tick the box and forget about it for 3 years whilst the qualification runs out. But I mean, in the last 3 years, some huge changes in first aid have happened. I mean, the biggest one being, I'm not sure if anyone here has ever worked with children or paediatrics. So first aid or the resuscitation protocol for paediatrics used to be 0 to puberty. And in 2021, that changed to 0 to 18. So you're having to change the resuscitation protocol to up to 18-year-olds. And I'm still teaching now people that obviously haven't done the course in 3 years, who didn't know this, and work with children. So refresher courses, like you said, Christopher, is really important to keep everyone up to date, especially when it's something like defibs and resuscitation.
Aren't you slightly raising the question, given that the qualification is not mandatory, but then Chris mentioned about 1 year, you just mentioned 3 years and so on. What is the advice then, say, let's say, rather than the law, on what, how often should my hotel staff be trained?
So, I mean, a regulated course, or any course, competent course, lasts 3 years.
Yeah.
And then depending on the qualification they did, so let's say they did the emergency first aid at work, the 1-day course, after those 3 years, they would have to do that whole course again. If they did the 3-day comprehensive first aid at work course, they would only need to do a 2-day requalification course every 3 years. Now, the refresher isn't mandatory, but the health and safety executives do recommend that people do an annual refresher, just because of those protocols that do change. They can be quite big, and it's obviously, we teach first aid and we hope no one ever has to use it. So it goes in, you learn it all, and then by the time you've done it 3 years later, most of it's gone. We have actually just introduced a virtual sort of refresher first aid, because we understand that it's quite hard to get a whole team together to do an annual first aid refresher every year. So we've thought we'd bring in this sort of virtual platform, because that's what everyone loves to do these days. And it's just a way to refresh everyone on the statistics and how to do things. You don't get the good practice that you need to get in, but you get the knowledge kind of updated.
Oh, yeah, that there are various challenges. One is, do I close the hotel for a day for all the staff to do it? Yes, then you could say just some on a day, but that's even more disruptive. It's how a business can ensure that it's got all of its staff fully trained. Really, that's the challenge.
Yeah, definitely. I think so I do a lot of training in nursing homes, as a majority of our business, really, and that is the biggest complication that people face, because obviously you can't close a nursing home down for a day, half a day, whatever. So we do a lot of combi courses or combined courses, where we might deliver half of the course virtually to the whole, or half the team, and then we'll come in for a day and do a couple of teams, all the practical stuff. And we try and make it work, because you can't close businesses down for a day to do first aid training. It gets impossible. Yeah.
And my only other thought is that we're trying to get some joint working. All the big hotels can afford to bring trainers in, but a small place might not be able to. But if working with you, we could use something like the great facilities at Lyndhurst Community Centre, and bring 2 or 3 hotels of my size together then that might be a possibility, a good way of working, because we just, not only can we not afford the time, we can't afford the cost of you coming in to deal with only 6 or 7 people.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and that is something that's on my to-do list. So I'm doing the Hampshire Business Show in October, so next month now, and after that I'm going to be starting to run local courses which are going to be open, because at the moment our business model was purely we go to a business, but I think open courses are a much better way, especially for local companies and local businesses where you don't necessarily have 12 people that you need to train at once, and it gets completely ridiculous.
We would support you in promoting that. I mean, that's what we do for our alcohol course, which is not just trying gin, it's learning the laws, and also for our fire warden that we do. It's one company comes to somewhere in the forest and we all buy into it. So that would be a good thing to work together with you to promote to local businesses.
Brilliant. And I'm really sorry, who did I miss that works at the community centre in Lyndhurst? Rob. Sorry, Rob.
I was listening with a bit of a chuckle as you spoke about defibrillators, because if you came and did a training course at our place, you'd be going, and the defibrillator is outside the front door.
That's a nice thing to say.
So it's certainly something we're conscious of, not just because of staff, but because, well, the same as Matthew and Christopher have here, we have the public passing through our doors and spending time on the premises, many of whom are quite old, or indeed some of whom are very young and very active and might hurt themselves at the youth group. So it's certainly an area that we have to cover.
Okay.
But for my part, I voluntarily did a Red Cross, I think, not St. John's. I think I did a Red Cross evening class over about 4 or 5 evenings, I think, but it was 35 years ago. So I'm probably due a refresher.
It's a little refresher for how to do things.
I was a motorcyclist at the time, and I was very conscious how grateful I would be if I fell off a bike and there was a first aider around. So I felt I should get some knowledge myself.
Certainly I think that, sorry, Sarah, the sort of idea of an open course, I mean, my sort of really appeals. My workplace is, because I work predominantly on my own, other than the dog. So my workplace is, fair in terms of my staffing is fairly limited, but, I spend a huge amount of my time in other people's workplaces, and I'd assume that they're taking care of themselves. But I also spend a huge amount of time in people's homes and in their front rooms and often of an age group that are middle-aged and and upwards. And I suppose the statistics suggest that at a point
Darren, we're losing you, unless it's just me.
No, I was a bit worried it was me.
It's Woodlands.
But I think we got the point. You were about to comment on old people, and we we got the point though. But no, it's for someone like
chance that something could happen in that environment. So having some basic be useful. Am I?
No, you're dropping in and out, I'm afraid. But your point's well made about what do we do about the many single owner businesses in the forest, and if we can do something to bring them together, that would be very good. Because as Darren was saying, that may not be that you've got any staff, but you definitely come across a lot of people when you're out and about. So that would be something to look at. When you're ready, Sarah, we can look at that.
That'd be great. I'd really enjoy doing that, even if it's like a half-day basic life support, which is probably similar to the evening course that you were just talking about with Red Cross. It's just a few hours of learning your basic resuscitation, using a defib safely, choking, and then how to contact the emergency services, because at the end of the day, that's really what first aid's all about, is doing as much as we can until someone more senior takes over.
So the world of
I think it's an interesting idea, definitely.
In terms of defibs, is that something that those of us with public buildings should look at? I mean, obviously Rob's got that sorted at the community centre. I mean,
I
are
would-
they still looking for whoever they is, looking for people to have them?
Yeah. So I mean, there's a huge push with the British Heart Foundation at the moment to get DFibs as accessible as possible all over the country. Like I said, down south there seems to be a lot compared to, I did a training session up in Norwich a few weeks back, and I couldn't find a local DFib to me, and that was slightly worrying. I think it's because I'm aware of DFibs and I've used them many times now and how important they are. I mean, anyone who likes statistics, so this is a bit of a depressing fact, I'm afraid, but CPR, so compression only CPR, you've got about a 5% chance of survival rate. You bring a DFib in to the mix within the first 5 minutes and that jumps up to 75%. So there is a huge need for them and they are popping up more places. There's lots of grants for them as well for charities. But yeah, the British Heart Foundation are the ones that are pushing it as much as possible.
Yeah.
Hi.
So
Interesting.
can I ask, where are they in Lymington?
So you've got one at the St. Barb's Museum
Mm.
on the side of the building. You've got one pretty much opposite the road. You know, as you go down to Grove Park, you know where I'm talking about, almost opposite Costa, you've got one there. You've got one at the Bowls Club by the tennis courts. You've got one at the Leisure Centre. Where else are we thinking?
So you're talking about Ashley Lane is the one down near Grove Park, is it?
I don't know actually. I'll probably check that one out. Is you take the left turning, it was just past the past Clark's. You're literally straight opposite Costa. Go down that road. There's one on the wall there.
Yes. Thank
There
you.
are some good apps available. They're free to download.
To find them.
The
Yes.
circuit.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
good. So you can find on a free app, you could find out where it is.
Yes. Yeah. I think they use probably a variation of Google Maps or something, but you know, I know, for instance, there's one at Bartley, which is actually a mile away. So I know exactly where our nearest one is. But
Thank you. I went to a funeral at St John's Boulder the other day, and an old lady fainted outside and was ill outside. And is the one near there? Do you know?
Not on the top of my head.
No.
But crematoriums tend to have defibs in them, ironically, purely because people get upset and end up having heart attacks and going into cardiac arrests.
There's one in Pilley, according to
Yeah,
the
I was
map.
going to say there's probably one in Pilley is the answer, isn't it?
It's
Yes.
just across the road from the primary school.
Thank you.
There's actually a map. I just did a quick Google search and there's a.
Oh, brilliant! Thank you very much indeed. I can't do anything like that quickly. Right.
So there is a site called The Circuit, which is run by the British Heart Foundation, which should have every defib that anyone's put on in there. So it has all the public ones in there, and obviously they're trying to encourage people who own private ones to upload them, so that when you call 999 and say, I've got someone who's not breathing, they can tell you where your closest defib is to you. So they'll tell you where to go and they will tell you the code to get the defib out the box.
Thank you.
So, and it's, I mean, they're good. It's good to do the training, but they are designed for people who have never had any training on them. So it's literally open up the box and it starts telling you what to do. It's brilliant. They're great bits of kit.
I think if that was demystified a bit by people having sort of watched a video about it or seen a demonstration, probably they would feel a lot more confident about launching into that process.
Definitely, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. So
I haven't worked out how to do what 3 words yet, but I guess that would help you find the circuit or whatever, wouldn't it?
So they wouldn't use what 3 words, but what 3 words I put on every training course that I run when you're calling the ambulance. Yeah, definitely download what 3 words.
Yeah.
Fantastic app.
Yeah.
And that does save people's lives, that app as well.
The statistic you gave was certainly very striking. You know, was it 4% versus 75%?
Yeah, 5% and 75%. It's crazy. I mean, that 75% rapidly drops after 5 minutes, but nowhere near towards the 5% mark, which is, yeah, really incredible.
Hmm.
I went on a course recently, and I thought, I mean, there was a rather critical doctor there, and he was saying something about 5%. And I thought that was about anything that one tried to do outside a paramedic or hospital situation, in fact.
Yeah, so that's, yeah, if you know, Joe Blogs came across someone in cardiac arrest and started trying to do CPR, and then they got a 5% survival rate.
Okay.
But yeah, defibs are the way forward. And I mean, as I said earlier, I'm a first responder, so we've got quite a few first responders in Lymington, in Hordle, quite a few in Lyndhurst.
Yeah.
They were all over the shop, and we've all got defibs in our backpacks. So you never know, you're never quite far away from one.
Mm.
And one of the first responders in Lyndhurst is a volunteer at the community centre, so
Okay.
pretty useful guy to have on our team.
So going back to that which did kind of make Darren smile and me, we shouldn't have done. It would be quite a good idea if hearses actually had a defibrillator for people who've come along to mourn, wouldn't it?
Yeah, a broken heart is a killer.
Yeah.
That you get a lot of calls out to those sort of places, and it tends to bring obviously people of an older community as well. So
Yeah.
it's, yeah, so a lot of crematoriums have them now. But yeah, crematoriums, sports centres and schools are your main ones, and big shops, so big Tesco's and that sort of thing. They sometimes have them.
Mm.
Is there a lot of first aid training going on in schools?
There is. We never really approached schools yet. We will be. But yeah, so obviously, well, funny enough, so the obviously health and safety executives, as I was saying earlier, don't necessarily say that you have to have first aid training for non-employees. They recommend it. So for example, teachers, not every teacher needs first aid training. But obviously it's a huge advantage. And then specialist training for teachers, so pediatric training, which is a 2-day course rather than a 3-day or a 1-day course, just because children have got lots of other things that go on with them that are very complicated. But there's defibs in schools now, so it's part of the curriculum as well for children. So key stage 3 and 4 now need to learn first aid, which is quite good, really good, I think.
That's good to hear.
Definitely. But yeah, I mean, I've got a few links I'm happy to share with people of sort of the HSCE documents and stuff on who should be trained and how they should be trained. So I'm all happy to put that in the chat. But
yeah, or if you've got them on something, if you could ping it over to me, it can go up with the video afterwards.
okay,
that would be good.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll do that then.
Because the chat disappears quickly, and it'd be good for people to have that, and those who couldn't join us.
Yeah, brilliant. I'll do that then. And yeah, and I'll look into some dates. I'll speak to you directly, Matt, about
Absolutely, yeah.
open first aid course.
Try and do something that, in the quiet season would be best for hospitality.
Yes, yeah.
So January, February, that sort of time, to get people trained up for the summer, work out what is the optimum length of time, or what you can offer for that. That would be really good.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that would certainly bring people together. And as I say, there's various facilities we can use, but the community centre in Lyndhurst is very central and would be perfect for that. And they've got a defibrillator outside which you can point and show.
Yeah, so I promise they are around. There's one outside.
Great, excellent. Well, thanks for everyone for joining us today. The sun's just come out in Lymington, so that's a good sign.